Bartenders and bouncers. How accurately can you predict a patron's night will turn out? Can you spot who's going to start a fight, get lucky, strike out, bath, etc? Were you ever way off? You can usually spot who's going to drink too much, who's there to get laid, and who's going to make a fool of themselves. I'm usually pretty good at picking out who memorable people are going to be, but one time I was way off. This slightly overweight office worker in his late 30s comes stumbling into the college bar I was working at around midnight on a Friday. Just about everyone else there is a college student, and by the way he was wobbling I guessed he was wasted and looking to pick up a college girl. So I decided to keep an eye on him and make sure he didn't get too creepy or aggressive. Holy frick, was I wrong. Over the next 2 hours he worked his way through just about every group in the bar, bringing drinks with him and making friends with everybody. He talked to the people playing pool, the kids standing awkwardly off to the sides, the groups of girls out for the night, all while being as friendly and genuine as possible. It was really something to watch. At bar close when he comes to settle up his tab, which was almost $200, I asked him where he was from and what he was doing. He explained that he had attended our university in his youth, and whenever he felt like he was drowning in how mundane his life had become he would come back and prove that he was still the same fun guy he was in college. I didn't see him again for the rest of my year working there, but I often wonder how he's doing. I am a bouncer. You can tell who's aggressive when you greet them and ask how their night is when you add them. Either they will have a positive response or just a standard response, or they are in butthole when they respond dickishly. I once had a guy come in, biggest douchebag I've ever seen. Drove an Audi, obviously well off, very built. Asked for his ID and he said really and shook his head. Instantly I knew he was a C, or so I thought. He got drunk, then was buying the whole bar rounds, was really happy, dancing, being overly touchy with everyone. Not in a creepy way, just in a good time kinda way. Tried to slip my $100, I told him no, and he just said what about a hug, of course. To this day, I have no seen someone who was in butthole sober become a good guy drunk. The molly kicked in. As a bartender, I love to pick out a single person who is here especially early, one that I know will be here over the long haul and get especially trashed. He gets there in daylight, alone, and sits with 2 seats between the nearest person, guy or girl, seldom looks up from his phone. He's typing on Reddit. I dim the lights according to his drunkenness, and he starts to wobble back and forth to what he thinks is the beat of the music I'm playing. Then he passively pays, and slunks off into the night. Who knows what becomes of him? Tips well. I used to be that guy. He's single, probably just moved into the area, either lives alone, or lives with roommates who don't socialize. He's just lonely and not sure what to do with himself at night, so he goes to the bar and drinks. Talk to him, please. He's most likely a decent guy in need of some conversation. Ex-doorman and ex-barman. Had some right surprises from punters. The ones you'd have thought would end up being C would end up being the happy drunks. Other end of the scale would be the quiet girl who would get totally crap-faced and try to batter people with her stiletto shoes. Some of the worst would be the couple that start off all nice and happy, but after a few drinks she thinks he's after another woman. She'll be slapping crap out of him for some reason, and the second you intervene you end up with both of them trying to fight you. Pay was okay for a few hours work, but never again. I have never felt more trapped than I did when I was in a booth with a drunk fighting couple. I heard so many things I shouldn't have, was nearly knocked in the face by an angrily gesturing arm, and have honestly never looked at them the same. You do build up an eye for people, but it's rare to be 100% accurate. There are signs to look for, typically as people are drinking or interacting with you, rather than when they just walk in. Someone that orders a second drink within 10 minutes of the first is probably going to get drunk. Someone that stands there and chats with you for a few minutes probably isn't going to get super drunk. The guy that comes in alone and starts immediately eyeing up women from the corner is likely going to talk to every girl he sees until he finally gets one to go home with him. The girl that comes in with the bachelorette party that isn't dress up in pink with dongs everywhere is probably the only single stable person of the bunch. Yeah, married women will go freaking nuts at a bachelorette hen party. People that wear hats indoors are 90% more likely to start being a fight. They are also 90% more likely to use the term S or C when talking about women. I like the guys in hats perspective. If it's a monster hat, do the odds go up to 99.9%. People who changed their regular drink would often be facing some life problem and would often become a different type of drunk, for the worse usually. This is actually pretty interesting. I changed my regular drink recently just because my friend turned me onto one that I liked. I could see this being true for a majority of cases though. Bartender here. We can make assumptions based purely on someone's looks as to the type of issue a certain customer or group of customers. Groups are easier, might cause, but whether or not it will happen depends on how the night goes. For example, if a group of late 20s to middle-aged men all dressed in jeans, work boots and t-shirts or company polos walk in the door, we go ahead and get a bunch of spitter cups ready and start looking for the one or more butthole in the group that's going to try to start a fight with someone. If a fight is to be had, it will most likely come from this demo. Also, if there is a group of females, any age group, that walks in and one is wearing a sash, bride-to-be, birthday girl, just divorced, whatever, we can safely assume one of these entitled ladies will be starting crap with a member of the staff at some point in the night. As for solo acts, the creeper is the easiest to spot and the easiest to deal with. Once he crosses the line, and he will. Plus, embarrassing a guy that's made every lady in the place uncomfortable is pretty fun. 2. College kids drink like they want to kill themselves and are most likely to puke. Alcoholics are killing themselves but need the bar, so are usually well behaved. Anyone that screams woo is 100 times more likely to have to be cut off than a person that doesn't. Sports fans are usually okay by themselves or in groups of twos. Any more than that and you risk a showing of the bros where singing and chanting and taunting and general ashlery ensues. I could write a book on the subject as this just scratches the surface. Keep going. I like hearing about where all of my friends and I fit into these various groups and how we're perceived. Girls with sashes are so easy to ragabate. Bachelorette party sash equals OMG. Happy birthday. Ex-bartender of 5 years here. I used to tend bar across the street from a college football stadium at a pub grill and also bartended in the downtown center at a plain old bar. After working behind the bar for even just a few weeks, you start to pick up on everyone's vibe. By nature, you are just people watching the customers, making sure no one needs a refill, no new customers, etc. It was easy to pick out the group of friends celebrating, the casual drinkers, the bros, the sloppy drunk type of people, everyone. You don't necessarily listen into conversations, but you do definitely pick up on certain words and actions. Is a customer cursing a lot, making a scene, crying, etc.? Those can definitely predicate a bigger issue. The hardest part about bartending is cutting a customer off. I equated it to a cop initiating a traffic stop. You have to give a volatile customer bad news and aren't sure how they will react, so you approach it cautiously and carefully. I have tons of stories from my bartending days and would be happy to answer any questions if there is interest. I love reminiscing about those days. TLDR. Yes. As a bartender, you typically get a sense of how someone's night will play out based on what you see and hear. Former bouncer and barman. Here, the worst time I have been horribly right was at a very nice, family-oriented bar. An extended family group came in for the daughter's 19th birthday with her very attractive friends. They just smelled of trouble. Well dressed, but totally arrogant in a cheap and nasty way. One of them takes off his jacket and he's got a steroid body and is wearing an 81 t-shirt. Eventually they get so drunk we ask them to leave. Birthday girl throws a bottle of champagne through the window. Dad and sons are squaring up to the bouncers. The whole lot are throwing glasses. And just to top it off, we find her best friend naked, bleeding and unconscious in the park opposite the bar about an hour later. That's right. Her brother's father, Mickey'd her best friend, violated her in a park and left her there, and she was cool with it. Holy WTF. That's some crazy crap. I was a bouncer and a bartender in Walt Disney World back in the 90s. That place is completely unpredictable. Everyone comes there to have fun, enjoy themselves, and it's called the happiest place on earth. Add alcohol and the nicest, most calm people turn into crazy buttholes. All the flights that I broke up, the only time I ever got punched in the face was by a woman. I totally didn't expect it and she caught me off guard. I was actually escorting her husband out for fighting with another patron. Lot of people saying you can. I'm going to go against the grain here and say not so much. From working at bars with an older crowd, younger crowd, gay clubs, hip hop clubs, I can say that I remember more often the individuals I felt a need to keep an eye on and did nothing, usually thanks to their friends taking care of them. Good job on all of you that suggest a round of water every so often, and can recall plenty of times where I've had to eject someone or break up a fight between two guys I wouldn't have guessed would have caused a problem. Sometimes you can see stuff brewing, and in best cases we just eject someone before it even has a chance to go down due to them being wasted and alone or something. But by and large I have always felt that you need to be keeping an eye on everyone as best you can. People I have almost never needed to worry about, scantily clad gay dudes and, as xenophobic as it sounds, this is the truth. Black guys anywhere that's not a hip hop club, they'll almost always be the coolest dudes in the room. I went to an inner city hip hop club once. Chairs went flying. Random people fought. Guys got their medallions stolen. Went outside. Cops with dogs were all over the place. It was crazy. I think what started it was a streak of about 3 Project Pat songs. Some guys were pretty much moshing. Knock if you buck. Then someone stepped on someone else's shoes and it escalated. It was mayhem. You can feel it in the air. I was never able to know exactly why I knew a night was gonna be busy, but I still knew somehow. A sure sign of trouble was the sausage to buns ratio being way off though. I work as a doorman and my god, where do I begin? Can I see where someone's night is going? Yes, sometimes you can guess if they are going to be a sad or happy drunk. When it comes to fighting, it's between 2 types of people. One is the arrogant prick who comes in looking to start trouble. The other is the quiet guy who is really easygoing, but after about 3 drinks the dance floor becomes his arena. Barfing is something that I deal with really regularly and everyone is a candidate for that one. Getting lucky happens for some of the lucky ones, but I've seen some guys strike out in the most spectacular ways. Was I ever way off? Yeah, actually a lot of the time, because sometimes the big guy who looks like he is going to fight half the people at the bar and win is actually one of the nicest guys in the bar and will always listen to you. And some short sweet looking girls have turned out to raise heck. In my prime I could tell who was going to get lit, who would be a problem, who was lonely, who was lurking for a hookup. There was one guy I was dead wrong about. It was the start of my shift and this big burly guy was sitting at the bar drinking a pitcher of beer. Thought I was going to cut him off within the next hour. He started chatting me up, telling me a story about how he had decided to canoe down to the Gulf of Mexico to find himself. I didn't buy it and started focusing on other clients. Several minutes later I noticed he had a big picture book on the bar. He ordered another pitcher of beer and started showing me all the photos of his trip so far. There were probably 60 or 70 pictures of his canoe and the various bodies of water he had traversed so far. Told me he was emotionally bankrupt from a recent family death. Quit his job to find himself. He closed the bar down with me, had several more pictures and I never had to cut him off. Got a postcard from him several months later when he reached the Gulf. Most strong I ever was about a patron in my 8 years getting a PhD in people. Admittedly, it's not everyone who brings a photo album to a bar. Door girl here, rear. I know. We have a guy that goes to the venue I work at that seems to always get cut off or kicked out of every show he goes to. He's not aggressive or anything. He just gets wasty and falls asleep or barfs or something. Then he sits outside and watches through the windows all longingly but doesn't bother anyone. The first time he made it all the way through a show I was so proud of him. I can usually tell what kind of night I'm going to have based on who's playing. EDM shows are always a challenge because everyone's all jacked up on drugs and don't know how to mix that with booze. The shows that draw older crowds are hard too because they don't go out like they used to but try to party like they did because they got a sitter for the night. Sometimes we'll try to guess who's going to get kicked out first but we're not super accurate. I always keep an eye on people who try to argue with me about anything. That's the first sign they're going to be trouble since I'm pretty pleasant. I feel like sometimes there's an advantage to being a gal working the job because I get a little extra inherent respect, but they won't hesitate to call me a power hungry bee when I have to put my foot down. Door girl here. Rare. I know. IDK but AFAICR back when I used to go see bands. At pubs. A lot. It was always females aka door BS. Usually with a bouncer standing near. Who took your money and checked your tickets. I was a bouncer bartender in college for 3 years. Most of the employees at my bar were pretty good at this. We would get competitive too. Best weekends to play this game were mom's weekend, dad's weekend, homecoming when we had an older crowd that wasn't used to drinking with college kids. I won $150 by picking which mom was going to make out with a student. Yes, the people who will get into crap are usually seeking attention and drunkenly showing off for spectators and engaging in multiple a-hole behaviors. Examples of these behaviors include being too familiar with strangers, locking eyes too long, asking other men where they're from, talking about street gang politics, discussing drug or weapon sales too openly and casually, cracking knuckles and rubbing fists, adjusting hat, jewelry, belt, smirking and looking around a lot, nodding upwardly at people, letting go of a door that closes awkwardly in another person, etc. It's an odd mixture of street culture and old-fashioned respect, like not blowing smoke on people, holding doors, ladies first, etc. Central California nightclub employee. There was a bartender I worked with that knew exactly how much a person could take before they start getting mean and unruly. A customer would walk in and she'd say 4 shots and 2 beers is his limit, and sure enough if he had 5 shots he was a raging butthole. And she could do that with like anyone. It was crazy. Some girls it's gonna take her 2 glasses of wine before she starts making out with him, 2 glasses of wine later and that lady forgot where she was and started hardcore going at it with this guy. She was the liquor whisperer. She is the liquor bobandy. Bouncers see more than you think. In college, way back in the 90s, we used to go to an 18 and over bar on Thursdays for disco night. Nobody else would dress up, but we would show up with 10 or 12 people in full polyester regalia, beautiful plastic suits and dresses from area thrift stores, and every time we would go through the back entrance, where the 18-year-olds could enter, the bouncers would have a heart-to-heart. Okay, you guys, don't sneak drinks. We know you sneak drinks. We see you sneak drinks every week. You get kicked out every week. Don't do IT. Okay, yes, of course. You're right, of course. We won't. We would nod and agree and swear up and down. Whatever it took to get inside. And one electric slide later, the lone 21-year-old would head over to the bar side, buy a couple Long Islands, and sneak them back to us. One small sip and the heavy hand comes down on your shoulder. The other hand is pinching the bridge of his nose. God dang it, you're out. Get out. What the frick did I say? More nodding. Yes, of course, you're right. We did it. We're very sorry. Won't happen again. See you next week. I think you're just not very sneaky. I did this constantly from 1821 and we never got caught. I always felt like I could tell how a guy would behave by how he held his beer. With their hand around the neck right below the mouth of the bottle were the immature ones who'd likely be tossed. If they held the bottle by the neck with their fingers, their dad was a lawyer and you couldn't touch them or they'd own the bar. Former bouncer. What I got really good at was guessing people's ages. I was almost always able to guess someone's age within 2 years. Except Asians. So many 27-year-olds that did not look of legal age. I work with a Filipino guy. Thought he was around my age. 21, 25. Turns out he's 38. WTF. It's always fun when you're heading home to see the guy you knew would end up not being able to handle his drink, a drunken mess laying in a doorway covered in his own vomit, while his friends who you called out were chase P over helping him chat up terrified bored looking girls in the takeaway next door at 4 AM completely oblivious. Not a bouncer but was good friends with my local watering holes bouncer. Some things are just so obvious. One time a large group came in and some were underage and the bouncer would not let them in. So their genius plan was to start a fake fight in the parking lot and get him to leave the door. He was the only bouncer so he runs out to the lot to break it up. As soon as he leaves the underage come in through the front door. Being the bouncer's friend, I step right up and say "Ids please" and they all turn around and walk out. I work at a restaurant bar so it's a little different, but it's a spot where lots of people go for first dates and it's pretty easy to tell who's getting a second one. Like, nobody. She's not impressed by your portfolio. Maybe try asking her questions instead of talking about yourself constantly. I love spotting the terrible first dates. I always try to spot them when I'm out on the town. I've always had a betting pool set up on various clients. Who's going home alone, not getting kicked out, etc. It was fun. One dude was a wizard at this stuff, but he'd been doing it forever. You just get an eye for these things over time. Well, tonight I said we'll have a fight tonight just by judging who walked in. Night went smooth. Last week I was punched in the back of the head in the last 30 minutes of my shift by the last group to leave that I said were nothing. I've only been a guard since January, so I may lack experience. However, a head guard at a new venue was talking to me about experience when a lady walked in. He said her partner's talking to her best friend on the dance floor. Before he left he said watch out for the radio call. I laughed. As I expected, she went to the dance floor and came back to play pokies. A beautiful woman for her age. However, the alcohol, tobacco and gambling did take its toll. I was on Reddit, what I am really getting paid for, when I heard another guard radio for backup. When I arrived on the dance floor, the woman had already glassed her ex-partner in the neck. Luckily with a wine glass, not a beer bottle. I guess accurately predicting a patron's night would depend on past experiences with them and knowing them personally, relationships, attitude, gang affiliations, or if they spew up regularly. I shouldn't judge people on anything else. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.